In this video, I want to talk to you about place value and algebra. So when you were in elementary school, you were told about place value. So I'm going to go, one reason why I have my paper sideways is because I want to use these vertical lines to help us with place value. So right in this very first column, we had these things, we called it our ones, or sometimes it was called our units. And in this next column, we had our tens, then we had our hundreds, and then we would have our thousands, and then we would have our 10,000s and so on, okay? And then down here, we would have our decimals. So these here, down here, would be our smaller units, things that were between 0 and 1. Okay, so if I were to write some number, let's say I wrote this number right here, and I were to ask you, what is that number? You most likely would say, well, that's the number 1. But I would tell you, no, you are wrong. That's not the number 1, because I'm going to put that right here. So now what value is that number? That number is now 100. Okay, so 100. So notice that this here is occupying this space. So it's not equivalent to 1, it's not equivalent to 10, it's 100. And I have to put those zeros in as placeholders. So what if I were to tell you this? And I were to say, what number is that? You would say, well, that's 32. And I would say, no, that's the number 3020. So what I'm trying to show you is place value is important because $3,020 is much better than $32. So these place values are very important. We use place values in algebra. And the way we do place values, so I'm going to rewrite this a little differently. I'm going to come down here a little bit. So if I were to say these are my ones, I'm just going to make this a dark line. I would write this is my ones column, this is my tens column, this is my hundreds column, this is my thousands column. Okay, so that's what each one of these columns represents. But let's write these numbers differently. So let's write this as 10, but this could be written as 10 squared because 10 times 10 is 100, and this could be written as 10 cubed. And then this here is just some constant. Oh, this is actually 10 to the 1. This is technically 10 to the 0. But we'll just leave this as 1, or we could leave it as a constant, okay? So now, how does this relate to algebra? Well, this is what I want you to think of. Let's pretend x is 10. That means that this would be x cubed column, this would be x squared column, this would be our x column, and this would be our constant. So these correspond to place values. So they are not the same thing any more than x cubed and x squared and x and my constant. You can see they're all different. Okay, so these are all holding place value. So why do I bring this up? So if I were to have 2x squared plus 5 as one number, and then I were to add 4x plus 7 as the other number, I can think I'm adding, so I'm going to put things in place value. So this here is my place value, right here. That's my place value. So now I'm going to say 2x squared. Where does that go? That goes in the 2x squared column. So I'm going to write 2x squared. And 5 is a constant. Here I have 4x. That goes in my x place value. And then I have plus 7. So notice how I wrote them all on their own lines. So what do I get? I get 2x squared. This has nothing that's going to increase the value either, so it's plus 4x. And then 5 plus 7 is 12. So this here is my final answer when I add these two things together. So let's look at this visually. So I have 2x squared. This is 1x squared and 2x squares. I have 2x squares right there. And 5. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that represents my first number. Then this is saying 4x and 7. So 4x and 7. So I got to get 7 of these out. That's 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so this is my other number. So the only things that look the same are my 5 and my 7. When I add those together, I get my 12. And there's my 4x. And there's my 2x squared. So when you're adding, we'll talk about multiplication in another lesson. When you're adding, I want you to think of your place value. So in the next little video I'm going to show you, we're going to do a couple of these problems. I'll show you with the rods, and then I'll also show you with how we do it with our keeping it like place value, or we could say like terms.